The first time I visited the Lykov family of old believers, who had lived for many years in the remote Sayan taiga in complete isolation from people, in October 1980. In extremely difficult conditions, almost with bare hands, they withstood and survived. Life has put on a cruel, but very interesting from many points of view, experiment, which once again confirmed the enormous capabilities and reserves of the human body and spirit. At the time, the Lykov family consisted of 5 people. 3 years have passed. From Peskov's publications in Komsomolskaya Pravda, the whole world learned about the unusual and largely tragic fate of this family. Many changes have taken place in their lives in recent years. The saddest thing is that 3 of the Lykovs, Dmitry, Savvin and Natalya, quickly, one after the other, died. What happened? From what? How to save the lives of the rest of the Lykovs? These and many other questions worry thousands of people. And so we again go to the Lykovs, to the remote Sayan corner, taiga dead end, as Vasily Peskov called this place not very well. Our second stay with the Lykovs was longer than the first in 1980. It was 2 weeks, from 17 to 30 August 1983. Some of the impressions from this and subsequent expeditions are described in the notes I made along the way. August 13, 1983 we left by train from Krasnoyarsk to the city of Agafia. The composition of the expedition, writer Lev Stepanovich Sherepanov, our leader, artist Elvira Viktorovna Motakova, Dr. Nikolai Mikhailovich Kudima and the author of these notes. On the train, the conversation kept returning to the Lykovs, and Lev Stepanovich and I, who had already visited them in 1980, have to answer many questions from our comrades. Nikolai Mikhailovich, as a doctor, was primarily interested in medical problems. I remember that at the time I was very surprised by the fact that the Lykovs did not use table salt in their diet. But it is known that sodium chloride takes an active part in life support, and its lack can lead to severe changes in the body up to mental disorders, loss of consciousness, acute cardiovascular failure and human death. The Lykovs' medical examination last time was hampered by our short stay with them, 2 days, and, of course, by the fact that their faith, old believers, sharply limits contact with worldly people. Therefore, those research methods that are usually used by doctors, palpation, percussion, auscultation, not to mention instrumental methods and taking blood and urine tests, were not applicable in this setting. I had to confine myself to purely external perception and finding out the anamnesis, history of life and illness. At the time, the Lykov family consisted of 5 people: father Karp 84 years old, sons Savin, 55 years old, Dmitry, 44 years old and daughters, Natalya, 50 years old and Agafia, 39 years old. This age was recorded by me from the words of the Lykovs themselves. In appearance, they all look 10-15 years younger. Everyone's height is below average. The tallest is Karp, about 156-158 cs, the lowest is Agafia, 148-149 cs. The physique is correct, proportional, no congenital and acquired deformities and defects were determined. Rapid mobility and increased elasticity of movements of all Lykovs, as gymnasts or acrobats, were noted. For example, Karp, at his advanced age, freely took out a fallen object from the ground, without bending his knees. Everyone's gait is free, relaxed, somewhat, especially for daughters, mincing, probably this way it is easier to walk in the mountains among which they live. There were no clinical signs of hyponatremia, low sodium content, which could be assumed given the absence of table salt in the diet. The front teeth of all Lykovs were preserved, on them there was the deposition of stones, they did not have the habit of brushing their teeth. Karp speech is correct and understandable, the rest of the Lykov speech articulation is somewhat impaired, which is not due to the presence of any defects in the maxillofacial and respiratory apparatus, but, probably, to the lack of great conversational practice and prolonged reading of prayers in a certain style and rhythm. In the mental state of the Lykovs, no deviations were noted. They are balanced, affable, benevolent, talkative, inquisitive, reasoning logically. Immediate, like children, with the exception of Karp, funny, especially Dmitry and Agafia. Everyone has a good memory, especially Agafia. The Lykovs are well adapted to the harsh conditions of the Siberian taiga. With us, they walk barefoot at a temperature of -3.5 degrees, felt free at this temperature in light clothes made of hemp fabric, dug potatoes with their bare hands from under the snow. From these stories it was found out that the Lykovs were sick mainly from injuries, sometimes there were abscesses, probably associated with skin damage and pollution, and colds, teeth ached. The Lykovs are treated with herbs, livestock, honeysuckle, blueberry, from the stomach, lingonberry, from the head, nettle, from gravity and blows, plantain and yellow flowers, from abscesses. The Lykovs' physical fitness and endurance are high. This is evidenced by the huge amount of work done by them, and our individual observations. So, for example, when Karp accompanied us from the lower hut to the upper one, the road went almost all the time up a steep mountain. He spoke freely, while the members of our expedition were drenched in sweat, at sub-zero temperatures, and due to shortness of breath they could not pronounce the words. The Lykovs ate twice a day, taking quite a lot of food at a time. Their food usually consisted of boiled potatoes, in uniforms, a chowder from a handful of wheat, turnips and unpeeled potatoes. Fish, grayling, was used infrequently, boiled and dried, meat very rarely, when it was possible to catch a deer or a moose in a trapping pit. Natural cedar nuts or cedar juice, crushed pine nuts with water were widely used. Bread is a mixture of flour and crushed potatoes. They did not drink tea, they did not use boiled water. They do not use tobacco and alcoholic beverages, they are prohibited. They don't have baths, they don't know soap, only sometimes they rinse their hands with water, more purely symbolic. August 14th. We arrived in Abokan. On the same day, we took a bus to the village of Tashtip, 155 km. Overnight at the hotel, Tashel, translated from Kakas, mountain. August 15. In the morning immediately to the airfield and at 10:44 am by plane and -2 flew to the Volkovsky area, where geologists are exploring an iron ore deposit. Under the wing of the plane there is a majestic picture of the boundless Sayan taiga. Gradually, the mountains increase in height, and now in some places snow-covered loches sparkle. Lakes are visible, small and large. But the most beautiful and largest, of course, Black Lake, rich in fish. During the flight, more than an hour, there were practically no villages, only a few houses flashed by on Koryachi Klyuch, a mineral spring with healing water and mud, about which legends are told. Its healing power has long been known, but it is difficult to get to it, and the construction of a resort on it is probably a matter of the distant future. At 11:50 am. The plane lands at the geologist's airfield located on the Abokan spit. In a straight line to Tashtip it is about 200 kilometers. We were met by Anatoly Ivanovich Lomov, a drilling foreman, our old friend from the expedition in 1980. Memories, exchange of news, and, of course, we hastened to find out how the Lykovs are doing. From the story of Anatoly Ivanovich, we find out that Dmitry, Savvin and Natalya died in October-December 1981. They were buried in logs hollowed out of wood. The cause of their death, obviously, we have yet to clarify in a personal conversation with the Lykovs who survived. When geologists offered to give pills to sick Savvin and Natalya, the grandfather said that everyone lives as long as God let him go, and refused treatment. Karp nephew came to the funeral with his son. They persuaded Karp to move to the Altai territory, to the forestry where they live. Those who want to work in the leshas, and those who do not want to do their own business. The authorities do not oppress, said the nephew. However, Karp refused to leave. According to Agafia, Dmitry refused the sacrament before his death. What is it? Protest. Recently, disagreements have appeared in the Lykov family. The grandfather complained that his sons did not obey him. The new hut was mainly made by the sisters. According to Lomov, when visiting geologists, Dmitry delayed the time of leaving. He did not want to leave people. At the geologists, all the Lykovs have already slept on beds, and not on the floor, as 3 years ago. We walked freely around the village, even alone. Dmitry especially enjoyed watching the sawmill work. At the next visit to geologists, Karp watched Color TV, waved his hand and said, "One thing is pampering, however." According to Lomov, many people have already visited the Lykovs in recent years, a group of tourists from the Altai territory, relatives, a nephew of retirement age with a son, a brother-in-law, about 75 years old, some pious, 3 people from Kazan University, recorded their dialect and said that they were from the northern Urals. About the speech of their grandfather, a group of school children came on foot across the ridge, and there were several other people. In July 1983, journalist Vasily Peskov visited the Lykovs and stayed for 2 days. Someone in a parcel sent the Lykovs, The Sistine Madonna, by Raphael, a clipping from the magazine. Agafia looked carefully and said, however, "Not of our faith," and did not take it. Madonna still hangs on the wall in one of the geologist's houses. Lomov says, "I'm waiting for Karp in his hut. Finally he appears. He walks, carries a half bucket of podanka, fallen cedar cones, and grumbles, 'Here he is attached, he follows me all day.' It's about the bear." The grandfather collects cones in a heap and goes to another cedar to collect the next one, so that he can then throw everything into a bag at once. And the bear is right there. It rakes up cones with its paws and eats them with pleasure. Or one more episode. Grandfather walks in felt boots on melted snow, puddles and water. And under the roof he has 4 pairs of rubber boots, a gift from geologists. They ask him, why in felt boots and not boots? Answers, and so it is softer. According to Lomov, Karp relatives condemn him for leaving the world and his children have no families. August 16. We were waiting for a helicopter at the Volkovskoye area to take us closer to the Lykovs. The helicopter did not arrive. We tried to fish in the Balkan with a rod and sled. Caught nothing. According to geologists, there are no fish in the river this year. We spent the night at the geologist's house. August 17th. In the morning a Mi-8 helicopter arrived. We load backpacks, sleeping bags, receive the last instructions from Anatoly Ivanovich how to go to the Lykovs from the swamp, the helicopter landing site. Another person is flying with us, Vyacheslav, an archaeologist from Odessa, who has a few free days and he certainly wants to visit the Lykovs. Mi-8 spins its 10-meter propellers and heads up the Abokan River. In 10 minutes the arable lands and houses of the Lykovs flashed behind the window, first the lower one, and then the upper one, to which we will have to go. Remember the direction. The helicopter soon hovers over the swamp and drops to 1.5 to 2 meters. Endless hummocks, between which water is visible. We drop our things and jump out ourselves. The whirlwind from the screws bent the grass, tearing off our caps. The helicopter takes off and goes back along the canyon of the Abokan River. Immediately there is a deafening silence. Jumping over bumps, we drag our things to the edge of the forest near the swamp. We divide the load into 2 parts. We hang one higher in the trees so that the animals, bear, don't get it. We take the other with us and go to the Lykovs along a barely noticeable path. We walked for about an hour and went to the upper hut in the Golden Valley, as we called it in October 1980, when we first saw the autumn larch bathed in the sun in gold. Agafia's curious face peeked out of the hut and disappeared. The new meeting with the Lykovs was cordial. Agafia remembered that we were with them in the fall. Karp remembered Lev Stepanovich's scribe Lenti, and me as a doctor named Georgi. They do not know the name Igor, not in their holy writings, so they called me Yegor or Georgi the Victorious, as Agafia jokingly said. As 3 years ago, they immediately began to regale us with potatoes and pine nuts. Karp pointed to a place where you can stop and make a fire. Vasily Peskov and 3 linguists from the Kazan city have already stopped at this place, as Karp said. We smashed one tent, put our things in it and went back to the swamp for the things we had left. We returned by 16 o'clock. We talked with the Lykovs, read the letters that are sent from all over the Union. The addresses to which these letters arrive are interesting. For example, South Siberia, Krasnoyarsk territory, Abokan, Abaza village, Tefny deadlock, from Komsomolskaya Pravda. Lykov Karp a Balkan. Settlement of geologists, geologist Agafia. Past the taiga deadlock. Lykov Karp Yosifovich. Agafia answers the letters, tracing old Slavonic letters in large handwriting. I ask her to write something in my notebook. He takes a ballpoint pen and clearly writes, Igor Pavlovich Nazarev of the month of August is the 4th day from Adam of summer 7491, Piss of Agafia. The letters, of course, are Old Church Slavonic, the numbers are written in letters, as it was previously accepted. For example, the number 4 was written with the letter D, and the chronology is old. I say great thanks. And praise for the beautiful handwriting. Agafia blushed with pleasure and, at the request of the rest of the members of our expedition, diligently writes her autograph in her notebooks, making the same mistake everywhere. Instead of writing, she displays Pisava. Anasi, Karp nephew, sent them the 70s. Agafia and then Karp read from him a prayer about George the Victorious, wishing that he would save us from the bear. They gave Karp a big knife and candles. I took it. He thanked, thank you. In the evening, the owners came to our fire and treated us to pine nuts. When several nuts fell to the ground, Karp gathered them all together. They get hard. In dealing with us, the Lykovs no longer have the wariness that was noticeable on their last visit. They became simpler and calmer. Probably, they are already accustomed to people and many new things, information, and this does not cause them a state of stress, but only arouses curiosity and interest. They are already free to take various objects from our worldly hands. Agafia retains a childlike spontaneity, although it has somewhat diminished. She is very critical of everything. For example, he speaks of Savin's unnecessary stubbornness. He uproots the stump and drags him alone, but no one needs this. When he could barely walk, she said to him, do not dig potatoes, you will overstrain, you will die, and nothing will be needed. Didn't he obey? He crawled on the ground and dug. That turned out badly. According to the Lykovs, Dmitry, or as they say, Dmitry, was ill for a short time, about a week, and died on September 19, 1981 from a cold. Savin was seriously ill for about 2 months and died on December 7. At this time, he could not even leave the hut, his back ached, there was a chair with blood. Natalya caught a cold. Before her death she was suffocated, she was crushed, strangled, very tormented, died on December 17, 1981, according to the old calendar. Talking about the illness and death of her brothers and sisters, Agafia withdraws into herself, slows down, her speech slows down, her words are quiet, clearer than usual, uniform, with pauses, her eyes look into herself, sits motionless. No facial expressions, she all in memories, in those hard days, re-experiencing everything. The story is detailed, with many details. Occasionally Karp supplements Agafia's sad recollection with short phrases. I listen carefully, try not to miss anything, analyze. Please share this video on your social networks, using the buttons under the video and subscribe to the channel. I ask you to go and watch other videos about Agafia Lykova, which you can see now on the screen in the end screensavers. There are a lot of rare and interesting facts about the hermit. Thank you all for watching.